Hey guys, I'm Philly Mentorator. In this video I'll show you my main tips when that really helped me as a shorter rider to get comfortable on this bigger machine, and I'll show you some techniques on how to mount the bike from side stand and in motion, how to move the bike around when you're off the bike, and also I'll show you one technique on how to pick up the bike in case you drop it. And I want to share this because these are the main, this is some of the stuff that I YouTubed both before and after I actually got the bike. And I'm really glad that I did because it really helped me get more confident on handling this machine. And now I know I don't have to worry going out on my own, like even in the forest, because I know that if I get stuck on the trail, I know how to turn a bike around and I know how to pick it up if I drop it. So it just really helped me. And for those who wonder, I am about 165 tall, which is about 5'5". So over to the video, and the first tip is how to mount the bike and dismount it from the side stand. First off, I want to show you what I guess is the most common way to mount a bike. It's pretty much hands on the bar and throw your leg over. This is how I used to mount my old bike, which was a lower Suzuki SV650. Which made sense as it was so low that anything else would be overdoing it. However, this way is a bit of a struggle on the bigger bikes like my Tiger. Therefore, I always used to climb the bike by using a foot peg when the bike is on the side stand. Put your foot on the peg and lift yourself up. It gives you more room and it makes it easier to throw your leg over the bike, especially if you have an overlander bag or other luggage mounted on top of your bike. And the same when dismounting. Stand up on the pegs, throw your leg over and climb down. Just remember to put down the side stand before actually dismounting. And then the next step is to get the bike off the side stand. I slide my bum to the side to put my left foot flat or almost flat on the ground. Remember to use your whole body weight at the same time to build enough force to straighten up the bike, and especially prepare your thigh, as this is the part of your body that actually pushes against the bike. And then push. Oh, whoopsie. Careful not to push too hard, and be ready to catch the bike with your right foot. You can see in the video that I had to slide my bum slightly to both sides a couple of times to be able to catch the bike before I managed to balance it nicely on my toes. And yes, this is how far from the ground my feet are if I don't point my toes or slide to one side. And just from a different angle where you can more easily see how I don't really have a chance to place both feet on the ground at the same time when the bike is tilted like this. And how I struggle if I only try to lean over and don't really use the push properly. I really have to commit. Left foot on the ground, and flex your whole body as you push off the ground. And remember to catch the bike with your right foot and find the balance point. And from a third angle, first off just showing how much I actually have to slide to the sides to be able to place my foot flat on the ground, which also makes it a bit more challenging to push the bike off the side stand. And one more tip that will make this easier is to remember to straighten up the front tire before you push the bike off the side stand. Not only will it work in your favor, but also it helps balancing the bike as the weight of the bike will be more equally distributed standing up. Just to remember the simple laws of physics, that the more luggage you have on your bike, the heavier it gets. Yes, it's that easy. And that if you park slightly downhill, the angle between the bike on the side stand and the balance point increases, which also makes it feel more heavy, as you have to push it further to be able to reach the balance point. And what to do in those situations when the bike gets too heavy? Well, that kind of leads up to my next tip: mount and dismount in motion. In situations where I can't or cannot be bothered to push the bike up straight from the side stand, then I used to mount the bike in motion. Sounds difficult, but isn't really. Stand next to the bike, push the bike off the side stand, balance the bike on your hip, both hands on the handlebar, clutch in, start the bike in first gear, put your left foot on the left peg, look straight ahead and just find something to look at. It helps you find your balance. Slowly release the clutch and then use the throttle to get the bike moving. Stand up, and when you find your balance, throw your leg over. When you come to a stop, it's the opposite. Stand up, look straight ahead, throw your right leg over, remain balanced and try not to put your leg down until the bike has come to a full stop. Balance the bike so that you can easily put down the side stand. See? Too easy. And you might ask, but can you do this on a fully loaded bike? And sure you can. It's exactly the same with luggage. Just remember to bend your knee a bit more. Yes, I know I'm showing you my left leg here, but it should be the right one. And maybe lean a bit forward in the same motion as you throw your leg over. Other than that, it's the same list. It's get the bike off the side stand, find the bike's balance point. I like to balance it on my hip. Hands on the handlebar, left foot on the peg. Clutch in, start the bike. Slowly release the clutch and use the throttle. Find your balance point and throw your leg over. I mounted my bike like this all the time when I was on my trip to and from Trondheim last fall. And on that trip, my bike was loaded like this. I actually found it a bit easier to mount the bike in motion when you have lots of luggage, as it gets so heavy that it's kind of difficult to straighten the bike up if you climb it first. But just remember that when you have a lot of luggage, the heavier the bike gets, and also it might challenge your balance point a bit. So please practice this without a lot of luggage before you actually start doing this with luggage. And be careful that you don't misjudge the balance during the dismount. And also, with and without luggage, I actually tend to mix a bit of both of the climb the bike or climb off the bike and the mount the bike in motion technique during my everyday ride. I tend to actually climb the bike in motion or mount it in motion, and then when I do a full stop, I will stop the bike, balance it on my toes, kick down the side stand, and then actually climb off. Except when I sometimes borrow the T7 that lives with me. That one is way too tall for me, so I actually have to mount it and dismount it in motion. And that means, if you wonder, yes, during intersections, or if I have to do a full stop during, coming up to a roundabout, or yes, intersections, or it's a line, or anything, I have to actually dismount it in the middle of traffic and then mount it again when we're going forward. So every time I ride like a taller bike, I try to plan ahead a bit. So, but it's just practice. I actually find it easier to mount the bike in motion than climb it first and then kick it off the side stand. So it's all up to you what you prefer to do, but please practice it a lot before you try to do it in the middle of traffic. So over to my next short rider tip. It's moving the bike around. It can be really handy to be able to move the beast around, even though if it's only in the garage, but also if you're out in the forest or stuck somewhere on a trail and you're not really comfortable doing a proper U-turn on the bike. So here we go. With my old bike, I used to push the bike around with both hands on the handlebar. However, doing this with the Tiger, I feel like I'm going to drop her as I'm forced to move most of my body weight over the bike to reach the bar on the right side, which makes it challenging to balance the bike. And therefore, I YouTubed some techniques that I've combined with some experience of my own. Stand next to the bike so that your hip touches the side of the seat. I also push my bum back against the pannier rails when I need to move the bike backwards, which I'll show you a bit later. But first, I always work on finding my bike's balance point, and once I have it, I tend to lean the bike slightly towards me and balance it on my hip to avoid the bike falling away from me, as I would have absolutely no chance in pulling it back towards me. So, side stand up, hip to the side of the bike, not two hands on the handlebar, but I do keep my left hand on the bar, and then I place the right one on basically anything solid that I can grab on the back of the bike. I keep my left hand that is on the handlebar on the clutch, as I like to keep the bike in first gear when moving it around. And this way you can use the clutch as a brake, since you can't really reach any of the actual brakes like this. And the left arm I use mainly to maneuver the bike, and I try to keep the pulling arm, the right arm, as straight as possible, and that is to avoid trying to pull the bike with my actual arm muscles. But keeping the arm straight will make the bike feel less heavy, as you will mainly use your legs and upper body instead of your arms. And on gravel like this, I really have to kind of give the bike a bit of a push or a pull just to get the tires rolling. But at first, as they start rolling, it's easier. And as I mentioned earlier, I lean a bit back and use my bum to push against the pannier rails when I need to move the bike backwards. I use my left hand to steer the front wheel and my right hand to balance the bike towards me. The bike usually feels a bit more heavy before you get the tires rolling, as you just saw, and especially on gravel like this. But once you get the bike moving, it feels less heavy and you can move it almost however you like. You can tell from my body language that I struggle a bit at first, but then it gets easier as the bike gets moving. And I have to stress that I always have the bike leaning more towards me than the absolute balance point, and that is to prevent it falling away from me. Challenge yourself and see how far you can let the bike move away from you before your muscles or body weight is not enough to hold the bike anymore. And you'll see that it's not far at all, at least not for me. Therefore, it's easier to balance the bike towards your hip instead. I also think having a good technique moving your bike around is really underrated, as I didn't realize how often I have to use it. No joke, I think I actually use this technique every time I go for a ride, just to kind of get the bike out of the garage. To summarize, balance the bike towards your hip and find the balance where the bike does not feel uncomfortably heavy. Left hand on the handlebar and right hand on somewhere on the rear end of the bike that gives you a proper grip. Anything solid, not burning hot, but more like the pannier rails, the frame, or basically anything that you can hold on to. Personally, I don't like to hold on to the seat as it's soft and I don't feel like I can control the bike as much. Get used to your bike's balance point and learn to know your bike, and don't forget the side stand. There are many other techniques when it comes to handling your bike and dealing with a bike when you're on a dead-end road or need to do a U-turn in a tight spot. And I still have several of these to learn, but just to show off one technique that I already posted on my Instagram is this one. No idea what it's called, but it works if the surface is not too loose. Last tip for today: if you drop it, pick it up. Adventure riders that won't admit that I ever dropped the bike before. Are they really adventure riders? Well, I've stopped counting, but one thing for sure, knowing how to pick it up by myself was one of the first things I YouTube and insisted on learning when I first got my bike. And no regrets. Consider yourself lucky when you drop your bike on the right side. Just remember to put down the side stand before lifting it up. The side stand will catch the bike for you and avoid it dropping to the other side once you manage to pick it up. And remember that you don't have the side stand on the right side to help you for when you drop the bike on the left side. Then you have to pick up the bike and balance it at the same time. Or you can just pick it up, drop it over to the other side, and then use the side stand. So, how to actually do this? Find something solid on the rear end of the bike, like any types of bar, pannier rails, or the frame. On the front end, I hold on to the handlebar that is the closest to the ground. We are doing a deadlift with our back to the bike, so don't place your bum on the side of the seat, but more like on the edge of the seat. The bike is heavy, but I believe this is more technique than muscle strain. I have not hit the gym in years, and I know that I can for sure deadlift a 200 plus kilo by pure muscles. So let's do this. Start by sitting down on the edge of the seat like I showed you. Placing your legs, the clue is not to bend them more than 90 degrees. The more bent they are, the more muscles and less technique you have to use. Therefore, I always do a bit more than a 90 degrees, but I still have to bend them enough to be able to actually give room between the ground and the bike when I lift it. The next step, important, can't stress this, your core, upper body has to be used properly. Don't bend your back, but keep it straight at all time during the lift. That is to avoid injuring yourself. And remember that this bike is more than 200 kilos. One tip is to look straight ahead or slightly upwards to help keeping your back straight. Okay, so find something solid on the rear end for your right hand and check that you can reach the handlebar with your left hand. And find an angle that you're comfortable with, because we are actually walking back towards the bike instead of lifting it straight up. So be careful that your legs won't easily slip under you. And prepare your core and look straight ahead, hold on, and then 3, 2, 1, push and look straight ahead and walk back towards the bike. Now I've prepared with side stand so I can just nicely push the bike down, and there we go. And always do a power pose. Thank you all for watching, and I hope I gave you some new tips on how to get more comfortable on your big bike. If you have any comments on what I just showed you, or if I did anything wrong or anything good, let me know in the comments below. Hit the like and subscribe, and please share this video with other short riders if you think they'll appreciate it. So have a good one everyone, and I'll see you soon.